All right, the latest edition of Coach to Coach Convo. We're here with Arkansas legend high school coach Kevin Kelley, formerly of Pulaski Academy, and he's got some really great insights into the use of analytics in coaching, and we'll get into that here shortly. But first, Coach Kelley, give us just a little bit of information about you, your background in athletics, both playing and coaching.
Okay. I played football, I guess, probably since fourth grade through high school. Didn't play any college ball. Was actually going to major in accounting in college. Didn't plan on being a teacher or coach, but so a couple of my good friends were doing that. And looked like they were enjoying it, and me being a big football fan and owing a lot to football because I had a tough life growing up, and football is the place where I felt at home. I looked forward to going there every day and stuff. So that pushed me to coaching, and I graduated back in the '90s. For you younger guys, y'all thinking like '90s, like probably thought of it like I did the 1890s when I was growing up, but back in the 1990s, and graduated in Arkansas and went down and coached in the Dallas, Texas area. Because I picked that area because there weren't many jobs in Arkansas, and I'd heard Texas high school football was the thing. So I wanted to learn football while I was still single. Went down there, was down there on and off for 4.5 years. Then took a job back up in Little Rock. I was just a position guy down there, and I say just a position guy. I mean, the coaches are so important at every position, but I was a position guy there. Was offered an OC job back in Little Rock and moved up here. A few years later, took over as the head coach in 2003, and then took over as the athletic director also in December of 06, and then continued there through 2020 to May of 21. Took a job at the smallest college in the country, smallest Division I college, FCS college in South Carolina. Was down there, stayed there for less than a year. When the season ended, I wanted a couple things changed, and they wouldn't do that. Then Coach Belichick offered me a job with the New England Patriots. I spent a short amount of time up there, and then just told Coach I wasn't gonna be able to see my daughter graduate. Came home and started looking for something else, and so now I'm doing a fitness center business and still consulting with coaches. I've got some contracts with a couple schools that I do film for them, helping with game planning. I still host clinics, either online sometimes. I have people come to Little Rock. Last month, I had a group come to Little Rock that wanted me to put a clinic on for them. So I'm still heavily involved in football. Every once in a while, I'll still do some video for Coach Belichick, and I'm training kids around the city. So that's what I'm doing now, and love the game, love the evolution of the game, the history of the game, and everything about it, really, to be honest with you. And I still miss it.
So you kind of came to national recognition because, number one, you were wildly successful at Pulaski Academy, but beyond that, you are the no punt onside kick guy. And I was that too as a coach after watching you and kind of learning from you from a distance. And when I interviewed for the last coaching job that I had, I talked about that philosophy. And one of the gentlemen in the interview said, "Well, you must like to go to the casino." And I said, this philosophy is not gambling. It's actually just the opposite. It's playing the odds and risk aversion. It's not looking for risk, right? So tell us a little bit about how you got started with analytics and using analytics in your coaching.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. People say, well, you're gambling when you're doing those kinds of things, and it's actually you're the house. They build those casinos. They've got those big nice places because they don't have much of an edge, but in every hand of blackjack, for instance, if you played it exactly right, they've got 1.5% advantage on you. That's not a big advantage, but over the course of time, that 1.5 adds up. So what I started doing, when I became the coach there, I was all excited, my first head coaching job, and then it just hit me. It just came all over me. The first time I went and sat down as the head coach, after they told me, I was thinking like, how am I going to be any better than anybody else that's been here? We get the same kind of kids that we've always had. We've never won anything, and then I started thinking, oh my gosh, I think I'm a good coach, but so have the last guys that have been here too. So I started looking for ways, and I opened up my mind to going over our year in football, January through December. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? And I just want to be more efficient, and I want to be better at what we were doing. Well, we changed everything. Everybody knows the punt and onside kick, but we changed the way we were training, what we were eating, what we were doing pregame, how soon we were getting there. I mean, we were getting to games 45 minutes early before the game started, so the kids didn't have stress and sit there for 3 hours and all that. We were doing everything we could. Then we got to the on the field stuff, and the on the field stuff. It was about efficiency and numbers and playing the percentages and things like that. I saw a short video by a Harvard professor that had gotten into looking at field position, and he really opened my eyes to some things. And so I started doing some math on my own, and I started going for it on, I didn't want to be the same as the other coaches that have been there. So I was looking for an edge and I call it getting better without getting any better. And what I mean by that is, we make so many decisions as coaches based on gut. Here's an example. With your football team, if the other team has the ball and on 1st and 10, they throw an incomplete pass, but they get a holding call. Are you better off with them in 1st and 20 or 2nd and 10? Same thing if it happened on 2nd down. Are you better off with them in 2nd and 20 or 3rd and 10? And those situations happen. I figured it out. Besides with decisions you have to make on the field about penalties and what play to call and who to put in and personnel and all the decisions, you make I think you make over 5,000 decisions in a game. And I wanted to take emotion out of it and gut out of it and use numbers as much as I could. So we looked at field position on when to go for 2, when not to, and people have that go for 2 card. But, that's a little, there's advantages you can have by looking at the numbers a little differently. And punting and onside kicking came up as a place where you could gain an advantage, and the numbers were for you doing those things or not doing them sometimes. And I was just looking for that. And then when I saw how that worked, I got lucky, and MIT had this Sloan Sports Analytics Conference, and Daryl Morey, who's the GM of the 76ers, he graduated from Harvard and got a graduate degree from MIT. He had me up, and I got to speak. And then one time I got to sit in a room. I bartered. I said, I'll come speak if you'll let me in a room with the ESPN computer guys. Their database on football. I want to run some things through. Well, then I realized I wanted to know what the 5 most important things were that decided who won a football game. And turnovers is always really high. But at that time, the number one thing was who had the most 20-yard plays in a game. You won 82% of the time if you had more 20-yard plays than the other team did. So explosive plays. Well, I wanted to know the why. Why is that? And basically it's this. If you get the ball on your 20-yard line, average 5 yards a play, it's 16 plays that you've got to take to score without getting a quote-unquote drive killer, a sack, a penalty, something like that. But if you have one 20-yard play in there, that knocks it down from 16 to 12 plays your team has to run without a drive killer happening. And you're more likely to be able to string together 12 plays than 16. So I wanted to know the why. Well, I looked and found out the top 5 things. It was, whoever has the most sacks wins 77% of all football games. And I wanted to look into that. So I go back, I tell my defensive coordinator, we got to blitz more. I mean, that kills drives. Then I looked at my own numbers. I looked like a 4-year period. We've been really good on offense, wherever I've coached. Even in college, that little school we were at, we didn't have a good season, but we were 3rd in the country in total offense and 1st in passing. And one of the things you look at is you're like, what's going to win us games? Well, if you have more sacks than the other team, I looked at our numbers. We were scoring at an 88% my last 4 years in high school. We were scoring a touchdown 88% of the time, except for if we had a sack or a turnover. If we had a sack, the number went from 88 to 8%. And we were the best offense in the country. Like we averaged more yards out of 17,000 high schools. We averaged more yards per game than anybody in the country, but it even killed us that bad, 88-8. So that's a real number. Then you look, and I started thinking, why does that? Well, think about it. You get a sack. Sometimes you're scared to drop your quarterback again, although you might need 18 yards for a first down. You're going to throw a screen or run a draw, something that's not very efficient, and it costs you a drive. And so I started looking. I'm like, okay, we're getting like 16 drives a game. Every sack we give up is taken away almost 7% of our drives. If we give up 2, that's 14% of our drives. So I started looking for things that mattered the most. I came up with sacks. I came up with 20-yard plays, tackles for losses, penalties on defense. I mean, there's a lot of things that change a game, and you can get better by knowing those things and focusing on those things more than we focus on some of the things that we spend time on in practice. I taught my kids those things, and we spent time talking about how important they were. Because I think if a player knows how important something is, they do tend to focus on that and do a little better at it. So anyway, I used those numbers, and I really implemented that style in 2014. And this kind of can put it in perspective. We had, from 2003 to 2013, I won 3 state championships, and the school had never won one before that. So from 2003 to 2013, you're like 11 years, you won 3. That's good. I mean, anybody would take that. We won 6 of the next 7 and lost in the finals in the other one. When I implemented analytics into what we were doing, people, we became better coaches too as we got a little older and done a little more. But I implemented analytics, and it was a game changer for us. And most of the decisions that you have to make are made before you ever enter the game. That way, emotions out of it, gut feelings out of it, those kinds of things. And so it was a big benefit. People took notice. I've been lucky enough to speak all over the world, talk to NFL guys, presidents of NFL teams. I mean, just crazy stuff. And at the same time, it's because I was probably the only one doing it for a long time. And then basketball started doing it, and baseball started doing it, and hockey started doing it. Moneyball came out after I started using that a little bit, and it got publicized. And then Moneyball came out where the Oakland A's were using them. Billy Beane was. And then it just took off like a rocket ship, and everybody knew about it. And then, a bunch of championships later, and blessed beyond what I deserve, here I am.
Well, and it not only can you, make decisions as a coach, but you can coach that into your kids during the week, right? I mean, you kids know what's going on, and you can coach that's kind of data-based philosophy into them. Coach, why do you think analytics has been more heavily used in sports like baseball and basketball than it has in football?
That's an easy answer, and it's the same one I've given for the past 15 years, to be honest with you. Back when I was in Boston and doing a couple of times, I was at the Sloan Sports Analytics Conference, and every professional franchise was there. Major League Baseball, the National Hockey League, the NBA, and the NFL. And I'd sit up on a stage, and they would ask me that as a final question because they knew what my answer was going to be. They'd ask me off camera. But it's always this. If I said in baseball, I'm trying to think, you guys, you're in Michigan, the Detroit Tigers, could you tell me who the manager, which would be the head coach of the Detroit Tigers, were? Even in Michigan, some people would know his name. Not many people could pick him out. Same thing. Who's the head coach of the Pistons? You might be able to. But everybody knows what the head coach of the Detroit Lions looks like. They know who the head coach of the New England Patriots is, but you might not know who the Boston Red Sox head coach is. The NFL coach is the face of the football team and whoever their star player is. Those are the two faces of the franchise. It's harder to base your football team on wins and losses in analytics. Well, people think it is because those guys – they can't look big picture. In a game of onside kicks, we might get 3 one game and go 3 games without getting one, then get 2 the next game. Well, if they go the first 3 games and they're onside kicking or not punting or punting a lot less, and they lose all 3, they're not going to make it to the big picture. They're going to get fired. And the other side of that is with the egos of being the face of a franchise. And whether we like it or not, men have egos, and we all do. And if you're the face of the franchise, you really kind of want them to think you're a good coach, not that you're using numbers because you're afraid somebody will come along and go, well, we can just plug a numbers guy in there and he'll be a great coach. The people on the outside don't know what all it takes to be a good coach. And the good coach doesn't always understand that the people on the outside can help them with the numbers, but they don't want to be in that situation where they think anybody can plug anybody in. And I know that because I've talked to many, many very well-known college and NFL coaches.
Right. You get to the point where you have artificial intelligence now calling plays. It's strictly.
Yeah, that is the way that stuff is. And I'm actually playing around with it right now, where a friend of mine's writing a book about me, kind of, and we're doing some of that. It's amazing what it does, and it's not too far-fetched to think that could be, headed our direction.
Right. So last question, Coach, if you could give advice to a young aspiring head coach, how could they get started learning more about analytics and implementing analytics into their coaching?
The good thing now is when I started doing it, there were 0 websites. Nobody was doing it. Baseball started doing it. And then NBA started doing it a little bit. And then everybody else follows. If the professional teams start, then the college and the high school teams follow. But football was the last one to the party. There weren't any websites or anything like that. Well, now there is. I've got a friend that owns Sports Source Analytics. They've got great information. Football Outsiders is great. Next Gen Stats is on the NFL. Man, the terminology, if you go through and read, and it's probably boring to some people. I'm a numbers guy. I like it, but it'll explain things to you. And it's really a whole different way to look at the game of football. And and guys like me, I'm a passing guy, and I see the difference between what's considered an accurate pass and an inaccurate pass. It isn't a guy that drops the ball. It's, did he put it where the guy needs to be to continue his run? Like if we're running a crossing route, and they throw it behind the guy and he catches it and he has to spin around to catch it and he's tackled at that moment and it's a 5-yard pass. But if you'd have thrown it out ahead of him, he's a yard ahead of his defender on the crossing route, he could have ran for 20 yards. That's a failed play. That's a failed throw. That's considered an inaccurate throw. That's a part of analytics that nobody understands, the big picture effect and how it can really affect a football game. Now that it was 3rd and 10 and they had to punt because they completed a 5-yard pass when it was designed to be a catch and run because the quarterback threw it 2 feet behind, although it's a completion. And everybody's like, why are they running shorter routes than the first down? Well, it was a well-designed play. If he throws it where he's supposed to, it's a first down, and it changes the game. They don't punt there. They continue the drive, and they have an explosive play. And so when you start looking into the analytics, you start realizing there's a different way to look at the football game. And if you use them really, instead of spending time, and no offense to the guys that do this kind of stuff, the county fairs and all this kind of stuff that people are doing, even in the off season, man, I'd rather spend it on, the top 10 things that win football games the most. We're going to work on designing explosive plays. We're going to work on scheming for sacks and teaching our guys how to get off blocks. I mean, for us, then I dove into us. We were a set the edge defense, and well over like 77% of our plays that were given up over 20 yards were given up when we didn't set the edge, and the quarterback or the running back got outside and ran, or the quarterback got outside the pocket and got outside the edge and made a big play with his feet or his arm. Well, when I figured that out, I'm like, we got to teach our guys not only how to set the edge, but how to reset it if they lose the edge. And that's turn and sprint at an angle towards the sideline where that guy has to stop and cut back into where we are. Well, our defense changed. It got better when we did that. So if you really get into analytics, it'll help you understand the game from a different perspective. I think it'll help you be a better football coach. And at the same time, that's where the world's headed to in almost everything. It's simply being more efficient. I do think this, and I hate to say this, everybody loves their profession, but everybody wants to beat their profession. The coaching profession, most people think if you're a coach, you're not the brightest guy. We get the dumb jock thing and all that kind of stuff. That's gone away a lot because people get offended, but I don't care if they think I'm dumb or I'm smart or whatever. I know I'm smarter than most of them, but I do think that the people that embrace new ideas like analytics, embrace new ways to do things. If there's a reason, I mean, there has to be some support where it makes sense and you go, that's evidence to prove I ought to try this. The people that embrace those, and young coaches are more likely to embrace these things, are the people that are going to send to the top quicker. Now, you've still got to be able to coach ball. And you've still got to call plays and have relationships and learn which buttons different people have to push to get them to reach their potential. Now, that stuff's never going to change. But if you really want to be the best coach and you want to ascend in your profession, then you need to offer something that allows you to take an individual, a team, and an organization to their max potential. And if you know these tools are out there and you're not using them, you're actually doing your team, your individuals, your players, and your assistant coaches a disservice. And they're counting on you to have the right way to do things. So I'd say embrace those types of things. And then the other thing is real easy. Work harder than everybody you play against. I mean, there is no substitute, nor will there ever be, for working harder than the people you're competing against. If you work harder, not only will you get more out of it, but in your brain, you know you deserve to win. Your kids know they deserve to win. Your players know they deserve to win. And when push comes to shove, when you've got that deserving, you know, you're always going to be a head up, a step up, and have more confidence in what you're doing than the opponents, because you put a little more time and effort in. When we get to, I despise when coaches go, you know, they tell their team, well, they wanted it more than us. Or even if they say about their own team, we wanted it more than them. You really didn't on Friday night or Saturday. If you lined up across and looked at each other, both of you wanted the exact same right before the kickoff. Everybody wants to win really bad. But who wanted it more in July, in August? What were they willing to do what they had to do to win? And that same thing goes for coaches. Were you willing to turn over every rock that there was to find an answer for your team's weakness, or that your team needed to beat that other team? Were you willing to put yourself out there and go for it when the crowd's telling you not to, or when you know you're going to get chastised by the media if it doesn't work, if you truly know it's the best thing to do? Do those things, have some courage, don't be risk averse, embrace what's coming down the pike and how the game changes, and work harder than the other people, and you'll ascend in your profession.
All right. Well, thank you, Coach. I appreciate your time. I know young guys watching this video are going to get a lot out of it. Appreciate all you've done for me and for the game of football. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I think what you're doing is really, really good for young coaches too. So I appreciate that and your time.